Who can forget when Vader spent 10 days in jail for putting his hands on an interviewer in Kuwait? And when Grayson Waller was provoked during an interview, it took a lot of restraint for him to avoid beating someone up on breakfast TV. Grayson Waller's interview. It all started innocently enough. Waller and his fellow wrestler, Louisiana Knight, were invited to the popular Australian morning show. Natalie Barr, trying to engage the audience and add some excitement to the segment, asked LA Knight to perform one of his finishing moves on a crew member.
One of your signature finishing moves.
Can I give you one?
Yeah, can you, like, not me,
I'll just be over
but
here
can
as
you
well.
show us one of your moves?
No, I think it
Like in the
actually just
studio?
showed on the screen there. If I do that, it's not going to be a good day
Maybe
for
someone in
anybody.
like our floor manager, maybe.
Grayson felt disrespected by the request, and he didn't hold back.
Uh-oh.
I don't think you understand. Like, if I come over there right now, we're going to have the police here because I'm not going to give you some fake punch. Like, I'm going to punch you straight in the jaw. The disrespect that you have even talking to me. No, you want to talk to me like this ain't real? Don't act all tough, lad. Don't act all tough.
Rowdy Piper didn't threaten to get violent like Grayson, but he did interrupt an interview wearing nothing but a towel. Rowdy Piper's interview. The interviewer, Okerlund, was questioning Davis about his upcoming matches and wrestling strategies. The scene changed when Rowdy Piper unexpectedly stormed into the interview without clothes. Gene pointed out that Roddy should have dressed up before coming.
Piper, you'll take a microphone and dress up if you're gonna...
Roddy lashed out. He took the microphone from Gene and started ranting.
I can do exactly what I want to do.
Roddy wasn't done yet. He continued with his rant, insulting the viewers in the process.
Watching me, you know
Did they see him pin me? Did they see him pin me? No! All they saw is a piece of crap. That's all they saw.
The matter was settled amicably, and no one got sued. We can't say the same about the famous Hulk Hogan incident. Hulk Hogan's interview. We are talking about the interview that took place on the talk show Hot Properties, hosted by Richard Belzer. Belzer made a request that would lead to legal issues.
Why don't you guys, I want you to show me some
we ain't showing you nothing.
moves.
Hogan, always the showman, agreed and decided to put Belzer in a front chin lock.
Now, the first thing you need to know about amateur wrestling
Yes.
or professional wrestling are submission holds. You just tell me, brother, when you want him to quit squealing, okay?
All right.
It's called a front chin lock. How about it, T?
Keep like that for a little while.
The case was eventually settled out of court for millions of dollars, which Belzer used to buy a house in France. While Hogan got away with his violence by paying for his mistakes, Vader spent some time in jail in Kuwait. Vader and The Undertaker's interview. The interview host, Bassam Al-Othman, seemed genuinely curious about professional wrestling. Al-Othman, perhaps unaware of the sensitivity of the topic, asked the wrestlers if wrestling was fake.
In Kuwait here, I mean, I'm sure you heard this before, that they say this wrestling is not for real.
In a dramatic and shocking move, Vader knocked over the table in front of him, sending papers and coffee cups flying.
Does that fucking feel fake, huh? Does that feel fake?
Hey.
Does it?
Oh, no, just...
Why don't you come down tonight, and before I kick his ass, I'll kick your ass.
Okay,
all right?
Just calm down.
Security personnel and local police were called to the scene. They intervened to separate Vader from the host. Vader was detained by the police and held for 10 days. Just like Vader, Randy Orton was also trying to prove he wasn't fragile. Randy Orton's interview. The interviewer, trying to engage Orton in the audience, asked a series of questions about his wrestling style and physical conditioning. He even asked him about his breakfast.
The omelets, mushrooms, onions, ham.
Things took a turn when the host brought up Orton's history of injuries. He described Orton's breakfast as fragile.
No, that's really fragile.
At this point, Orton couldn't hold his anger in anymore. He lashed out. Orton eventually left the set, still fuming with anger. Wrestlers like Orton lose their cool a lot, but what happens when the owner of the company, Vince McMahon, gets annoyed during an interview? Vince McMahon's interview. It began with Costas asking McMahon about the XFL, a football league that McMahon had launched.
Can you guarantee me right now that there will be a year 2 for the XFL?
McMahon, visibly agitated, struggled to maintain his composure. As the interview progressed, McMahon's frustration grew.
What a ridiculous statement.
In a dramatic and confrontational move, McMahon leaned into Costas's personal space.
Shut your mouth and let me answer the question, all right? I'll be happy to answer. You got a situation that you don't know what you're talking about.
The situation seemed on the brink of escalating into a physical altercation. While McMahon lost his composure, at least he didn't call the interviewer a child like our next superstar, CM Punk. CM Punk's interview. The remote interview began with Landsberg asking Punk about his career, but the atmosphere changed when Landsberg began to probe deeper into Punk's relationship with WWE management. Landsberg insisted that Trump would return to WWE despite his controversial exit.
There's almost no one who has walked away from the WWE or WWF back in the day and not gone back.
The breaking point came when Punk snapped and called Landsberg a cool kid.
You try to act like you're my friend, and then when you get me on camera, you try to act like the cool kid in school. Well, and I understand that. That's cool.
Landsberg attempted to steer the conversation back to a more neutral topic, but Punk's frustration was already at its peak. The good news is that no one got fired after the incident, unlike the famous David Schultz interview. David Schultz's. This incident began with Stossel questioning Schultz about the legitimacy of professional wrestling. The turning point came when Stossel bluntly asked Schultz if wrestling was fake.
I'll ask you the standard question. You know? Standard question. I think this is fake.
Schultz's playful banter was replaced by a look of intense anger, but what came next was even more shocking.
You think it's fake? What's that? Is that fake? Huh? What the hell's wrong with you? That's open hand slap, huh?
In the aftermath, John Stossel sued the World Wrestling Federation, WWF, for the injuries he sustained. Ultimately, the WWF settled out of court, and Stossel received $425,000 in damages. Even so, the WWF was under pressure from the negative publicity and decided to fire Schultz. Most weird interviews end in violence or confrontation, and Stone Cold's interview with his former best friend Jim Ross was no exception. Stone Cold Steve Austin's interview. Stone Cold Steve Austin had forged an unlikely yet genuine friendship with Jim Ross, a commentator. But things changed when Stone Cold aligned with Vince McMahon. With a mix of hurt and anger, Ross asked Austin the question that had been burning in his mind.
Why in God's name have you aligned yourself with Mr. McMahon, a human being that I know in your heart you have despised?
Ross's question made Austin angry. As they kept talking, Austin got more and more frustrated. Austin felt like Ross was betraying their friendship because of his new bad boy persona.
You're telling me right now Stone Cold Steve Austin turns up the voltage and you don't want to be my friend no more?
Austin attacked Ross, unleashing punches and kicks. The violent outburst was heartbreaking, given the strong bond they once shared. While the emotions during the segment felt completely real, the segment was most likely staged, unlike our next interview with Mr. Perfect. Mr. Perfect's interview. He found himself on the receiving end of a thoughtless question during a backstage interview. The timing couldn't have been worse, as it came shortly after the devastating loss of his close friend and fellow wrestler, Rick Rude.
Condolences to the loss of a very good friend of yours and ours, Rick Rude. How did you find out about it? What's the last couple of weeks been like for you?
The interview had taken an unexpected turn, becoming a passionate tribute to Rick Rude and a scathing rebuke to those who had crossed Mr. Perfect.
Well, I don't believe that's anybody's business. You know what really burns my ass? So the people that live in that Atlanta area, the people that Rick Rude made a lot of money for, the people that knew Rick Rude that didn't show up to his funeral, the stuff like that. You know what? It's built up something it's a frustration that only I can control. I'm telling you right now. Wrestling lost one of its greatest athletes and one of his best money makers. And
Mr. Perfect would eventually walk out of the interview after giving the interviewer warning. It was a far cry from the embarrassment Psycho Sid brought upon himself during a pay-per-view promo. Psycho Sid's interview. It happened in the 1990s, a time when live television was the norm, and any mistake was broadcasted to millions of viewers without the possibility of a retake. The interviewer, Jim Ross, asked Sid a question.
Sid, I've got a question for you. We all know that you can bring the heavy offense, but there are a lot of skeptics that think that perhaps you can't take it.
Sid began delivering his lines with the fervor fans had come to expect. However, midway through his promo, Sid stumbled over his words.
Well, all the skeptics and all the people have a little bit of... Let me do this again.
Oh, it's live, Hal.
The moment was both hilarious and cringeworthy. In Sid's defense, at least it might have been an honest mistake. Shawn Michaels, though, did weird things during an interview on purpose. Shawn Michaels' interview. This next cringeworthy segment took place in the lead-up to Michaels-Hogan highly anticipated match at SummerSlam 2005.
Ladies and gentlemen, tonight, the immortal Hulk Hogan.
Michaels, dressed in a parody of Hogan's iconic red and yellow attire, complete with a fake mustache and bandana, Michaels launched into an over-the-top impression of Hogan, mimicking his mannerisms and catchphrases.
Well, on camera, brother, I'm a great guy. But when that camera goes off, brother,
it's a different story, brother.
He exaggerated Hogan's signature poses and catchphrases, making it clear that he did not hold his opponent in high regard. The segment was designed to mock Hulk Hogan, but at least the Heartbreak Kid didn't set the interviewer on fire like Kane did with Jim Ross. Kane's interview. This infamous moment took place on an episode of Raw in 2003 and was intended to showcase Kane's monstrous persona. Ross tried to ask Kane about his recent actions and state of mind. He also suggested that Kane might need help.
Kane, you know what I see? I see a man that needs help.
As Ross attempted to get answers, flared up and attacked him, throwing him to the floor.
Oh, no, look out!
Suddenly, Kane got a can of gasoline and did the unthinkable. Steve Austin, who was involved in the segment, tried to intervene and hold the situation together, but Kane was unstoppable. Kane pulled out a lighter and set Jim Ross on fire. It was fun to watch, and it solidified Kane's status, unlike the next mishap that led to nothing but embarrassment for Brock Lesnar and Tom Ferry. Brock Lesnar's interview. The interview, intended to explore Lesnar's career transition from WWE to UFC, took a dramatic turn when Ferry touched on a sensitive topic. Ferry asked about Lesnar's alleged steroid use, and the tone shifted.
You're just so big and...
Ferry's direct question, implying that Lesnar's success was fueled by performance-enhancing drugs, visibly irritated him. Lesnar laughed, stood up, and walked out of the interview, refusing to engage with what he considered baseless accusations.
You come out of the world of pro wrestling.
We're done. Thanks, guys.
The abrupt exit marked the conclusion to the interview, leaving a lasting impression on viewers. Unique, yes, but not bizarre like Eli Cottonwood's promo. Eli Cottonwood's interview. Cottonwood was standing in the ring, ready to deliver a promo about his mustache. Cottonwood, who was relatively new to the WWE audience, struggled to find his footing from the very start. The host gave him a topic. Eli's sentences were rambling and incoherent, and the combination of his awkward delivery and the ridiculous subject matter made for a painfully cringeworthy moment that has since become infamous among WWE fans, just like Mankind's attack of Jim Ross. Mankind attacks Jim Ross. In this memorable interview, Mankind's volatile personality shone through when he clashed with Jim Ross. As they discussed the grueling physical effects of wrestling on Mankind's body, Ross posed a sensitive question that struck a nerve.
Don't you think that it's about time in your life where you look squarely in the mirror?
The question was intended to probe the depths of Mankind's mind, but it tapped into a deep well of anger.
All you've done to people is mislead them and let them think that I'm having the time of my God life when I'm in pain.
His anger was so genuine that viewers could not determine if it was real or staged. Ross fell on the floor and could hardly breathe. This interaction shows that it takes only a single wrong question to provoke a person during an interview. Randy Savage's interview confirms it. Randy Savage's interview. The incident we are talking about happened during an episode of WWF Superstars in the 1980s. It was conducted by the legendary Mean Gene Okerlund. Mean Gene introduced Savage, who was already in full Macho Man mode. As Mean Gene tried to ask Savage about his upcoming match, Savage began to migrate around the set, moving to a different side of the screen with every blink. One of the most memorable moments came when Savage produced a small coffee creamer from his pocket and began to use it as a prop.
Living in a nightmare, but the cream will rise to the top, oh yeah.
The metaphor, while bizarre, was delivered with such conviction that it became an instant classic. While it ended on a light note, Stone Cold's promo with Jonathan Coachman ended up in a beating. Stone Cold, Steve Austin versus Jonathan Coachman. We head back to a memorable episode of WWE Raw in 2001, where Stone Cold Steve Austin was in the ring for a segment with Jonathan Coachman. Coachman, attempting to get under Austin's skin with his signature annoying persona, continued to push his luck. It all started because Stone Cold Steve Austin had been fired, and Jonathan Coachman arrived with a security team to escort him off the premises. But in a moment of predictable yet electrifying chaos, Austin's patience finally wore thin. Thanks for watching. Check out other interesting videos.